last time that the according to the Zohar, the rainbow has three colors. Right. And we said that the three colors, they correspond to three types of tshuva, or three types of results of tshuva.
They're not even primary colors.
No, they're not. They're mamish symbolic. There's no connection here to physics.
Well, white is purity.
White's not a color, as we know. Okay.
In Chassidus, white is
and so white is usually chesed. Yeah. And the red is din.
Right.
Is might or fear. It's like that he was a redhead.
Right.
And the green, that's tiferet. That's the rachamim, the compassion. So we said that from the tshuva.
When it says green, does it really mean green or does it mean blue? Because sometimes
no, green and yellow. Green and yellow are connected.
Well, in the Gemara sometimes they use different names.
Green and yellow you mean, I know what you mean, for the tchelis.
Yeah.
For the tchelis is something called kali. And it's green, greenish. Mm-hmm. So as it turns out, with the tchelis, it's not really what they mean. What they mean is, at least according to Zohar Amar, who did all the research on the type of snail that they think the tchelis was made from, that naturally the dye that comes out of the snail is red. It's argaman, which is there's a name for it in English, I can't remember, but it's reddish. And then it's reddish if it comes in contact with oxygen for a long time, or that it's uninhibited in coming in contact with the air. What they learned in the process is that if you stop the colorization process, I don't know exactly how it happens, but they're extracting some liquid from the snail, and that liquid, if it's in the open air, it becomes red. So what they do is somehow they prevent it from being in the open air until it stabilizes. So then they see something incredible, that it actually starts out as blue, and it goes to green, because it goes through the spectrum. So blue is on one side, it's the long wavelengths, and then green is in the middle, and the red is in the short wavelengths. So it goes through the whole process until it gets to red. So they have to stop it along the way. If you don't stop it soon enough, then it becomes green. And that's why apparently it was considered to be close enough, because it's made from the same source. So they could get away with certain greenish colors, but it's not because green and blue are interchangeable. Apparently because it went through the spectrum to get from blue to red.
Well, there's a whole article about that in the Or HaTorah.
Okay, since then Zohar Amar has done a lot more work. He put out a book, not on the tchelis. He actually put out a book on the red and the argaman. What's it called? How do you say argaman in English? That's the color of kings. The royal red. I don't know I can't remember what it's called. And that was considered a very.
The royal color was purple.
It's purple. It's a type of purple.
That was the Roman color.
Okay.
They say the Romans took.
That's when you were very rich.
From the tchelis, the whole same thing.
Okay. Anyway, it's an interesting topic in itself. So these three colors that the Zohar is talking about are not the physical colors, obviously, of the rainbow. They're symbolic, and they're symbolic of the type of tshuva that the person did. Did he do it because of fear? Did he do it because of love? Or did he do it? Okay. And here he says that that's what shines upon him. That in the way that he did the tshuva, that's what he reveals in Hashem. And that's the color that he sees. Okay? V'alidei tshuva, so we're in Daf Samech at the beginning. V'alidei tshuva da'adam milemata.
We don't have a Daf Samech.
There's more pages there.
No. And mine it finishes on.
No. You have more pages there. Just find the right page. It's not these. Give me the pages, I'll find it for you. There's more pages. I don't know if it's one of those. Here it is. No, this is Nun Tet. So you must have it here. It must be among these. This is not it.
No, I keep getting Noach.
Nun Zayin.
Noach.
Chet, Nun Tet. Where's one more? So must be that page. That one. Yeah, there we go.
Okay.
There we
That's
go.
good.
Samach. ועל ידי תשובת האדם מלמטה בג' מבחינות הנ"ל, through doing tshuva, in these three ways, ממשיך על ידי זה מלמעלה בכל בחינות, ג' מבחינות הנ"ל. So if he did it out of fear, he receives fear of God. And that's the light that shines upon him. That's the color that shines upon him. And same thing with love of God, and
There's
same
two
thing.
types of fear. There's a fear
There's
of
many
getting
types.
punishment, and there's a fear of offending your friend or right?
Mm-hmm.
So what's he talking
So,
about?
so you would say that here he doesn't get into it. But you would say that's why each one of them has also many variants, not just one. שיתגלה בנפשו בפנימיות. And here you're seeing, this is a very interesting thing, the concept of sight taking in a color. And by taking in a particular color, you become ingrained with that quality. And it's something that your wife likes a lot. The whole color thing.
The Rabbi Yitzchak Ginsburg has written loads of books on colors.
Not loads of books. He has. We have a lot on the photosynthesis if that interests her.
But she's discovering all these articles that he's written about different types of colors.
He has.
personalities.
He's done the work there. ועיקר התשובה, the main way of doing tshuva, הוא על ידי אותיות התפילה במסירות נפש אלוקות, is during Shmoneh Esrei. When we say tefillah, we mean Shmoneh Esrei. And the Alter Rebbe says about Shmoneh Esrei that it is like the whole time of prayer is called in the Zohar the time of war, Shat Slota, Shat Krava. But there are different ways of waging war. There is infantry and there is artillery. So the infantry, they use a sword. Their symbol is the sword. That's why always you'll see on infantry that they have a sword on their emblem. But the artillery, they shoot from afar. So their symbol is always a bow and arrow. Davening during Shmoneh Esrei, Amida, the silent prayer, is likened to artillery. It's not likened to fighting with the sword. Because it's like you're shooting from far away. Says the Alter Rebbe, why are you shooting from far away? Because this type of davening, it helps with the concealed evil inside the person. Every person has revealed negative traits, and he also has concealed negative traits that he doesn't know about. How do you attack those things you can't see? Yeah. How can you attack something? No, he doesn't see it. It's too concealed. It's too deep. And a person is also blind a little bit to themselves. So how can you fight something you can't see? He says, so that's like artillery. Artillery also can't see the enemy. They can be 30 miles away. And they shoot based on some kind of direction and location that they're given on a map and so on, and they try to hit it. But they don't see the enemy. He says the same thing happens during davening. Davening the Amidah. With the Amidah, it's like artillery. So it's like shooting with a bow and arrow. And that's why when Yaakov stood by Shechem to watch over his two sons, he knew what was going on. He didn't want to take part in it, but he didn't want them to get hurt either. So he watched over them. It says, I stood there with my sword and with my bow. And Onkelos translates, Becharbi uvekashti, my sword and my bow, he translates it as Betzloti uvebauti, with my prayer and my, what we would call today, supplication. So the prayer is the charbi. Prayer is, so that we say is Kriya Shema. That's fighting with a sword. It's face to face. But the bow symbolizes Bekashti, and that's prayer, Ba'uti, which is another word in Aramaic for prayer, and then that's explained as being as corresponding to the Amidah, and that's the Keshet. So he says the main time in which we do tshuva, or the way that we do tshuva, the way that we aim so that we can do tshuva. That's during davening the midah. And that's called b'charbi uv'kashti b'tzloti uv'auti kmo hakeshet shoroch chitzim lemerachok, like the bow that shoots far away. What is that all about? It means that you do tshuva during the Amidah. That's what it's about. And it brings down light from above. And the type of light that comes down, he says, corresponds to the type of tshuva that you did. If you did it out of love, fear, and so on. In the same way, by davening, you're lifting, you're elevating the soul, like, and here you get the mamish, the idea of the shape of the rainbow, that it actually looks like the flight of a projectile, of an arrow.
That's all well and good if you spend 3 or 4 hours on each one essay. But if you're waiting, the bus is waiting for you and you're putting your tefillin on as you're taking off your Rabbeinu time, and it's a problem.
It must mean that you're really in war. In war, they don't have time. During an exercise, maybe you have more time. It's a question. Some people are still exercising. Some people are actually in the battle. And in the battle, it doesn't take more than a few minutes. And if it does, it won't help anyway. And we see, now we understand why we say, Mashiv haruach. Amen. What does it mean that Mashiv haruach? So people.
Mashiv actually means to answer.
No. It doesn't mean to answer, and it doesn't mean to return.
I thought the word Mashiv is,
No, so there's a dagesh in the shin. Mashiv, which means he makes the wind blow. Like by Avram, Vayashev et tziporim. What is it there? What?
He split the bird.
No, that's before. But Vayashev et no, there's a bird. Can. So he blew on them, meaning he forced them to fly away, because they came to eat the pieces, the shards. So Vayashev it says, but there's a Vayashev Avraham. There's a dagesh in the shin, so it turns into an active verb that I make it blow. So he blew away the birds. The same way when we say Mashiv haruach, we really mean to say he makes the wind blow and he brings the rain. Mashiv haruach morid hageshem. But you can't take away from that there's a connection between them. That there's a connection between Mashiv, to make something blow, and between Lashuv, b'tshuva, and to return, and to do tshuva. And tshuva itself means Lashuv. Okay? To go back. So what would we say? So it's exactly like what Avram did. That Avram made the birds do what? Fly away. So to do tshuva is really to add spirit, to make it blow, in the sense of making the person more spiritual, and the soul being able to lift. And as we know that the soul has 2 wings, and 2 wings are love and fear of God. And if it doesn't have those, it's like a bird that can't fly.
But it's still not treif.
But?
But it's still not treif.
Why would it be treif? It's a kosher bird.
I'm saying if you take the wings, you take Indian away from the bird, it can become treif.
Okay.
But if they take the wings off, you don't necessarily make it treif. It'll be the best quality.
Okay.
Where did you see me?
I heard your keys. I didn't see you, I heard your keys. We don't have many people with your key holder on the street yet. As it becomes more, we'll probably have more. Okay, so that's what it means. Okay, so really so far we've come to the idea that the cloud and the rainbow, they all point to tshuva. And all this is very good. Okay, And now we said the reason why we don't.
That is praised.
It's highly praised. Why is it highly praised? Because it brings us rain and so on, and these are good things. And the rainbow is a sign that there's a covenant. And why don't we look at the rainbow? Because we said this is the light of God that's shining through. It's not the light of God itself.
You're not talking about tshuva that comes because he did a Averas.
Why not?
About tshuva that comes about because he
No,
wants to
it
come
could
to
also be
Kedusha.
because of an Avera.
But if somebody does something wrong and then does tshuva, why is that to be praised? Because lechatchila he shouldn't have done the Avera. Okay, so he wants to make up for it. So he's now back to where he was.
No,
Go to
so
jail,
we said
jail don't pass go, right? You go back to where you started from. It's not something, but a person who wants to rise higher to Hashem, and come closer to Hashem because he loves Hashem, then that's praiseworthy.
Huh? And that's what tshuva is. It doesn't matter what the reason for it is. It could be that the reason for it is that he went further down. It could be that the reason is that somehow he just wants to go higher. Fair or not fair, it turns out that the person who wants to return to Hashem because he did an Avera surpasses the individual who only does more, who only comes closer and closer. And why is that? Again, that has to do with the energy at the bottom, what hits, and then. Okay. Another way of saying it is the Gemara says that it's not the Gemara. I don't remember where it is. That in the generation of Rashbi, there were certain generations that they didn't see the rainbow. It's Medrash. So why? Apparently,
there was no tshuva, there was no Avera, there was nothing wrong.
Okay, because the rainbow and the cloud, this is all tshuva.
Also Chizkiyahu,
Could be. So this is all a product of tshuva. If there's a generation in which there's somebody who prevents people from sinning in the first place, who's able to make sure, or like in Rashbi's case, that he says, "Yachol ani liftor et haolam min adin." I can cancel out the din. It's enough what I do.
That's enough.
It's like
for everybody.
That's tshuva for everybody. It's not tshuva even. So there's an interesting thing that you don't know if it really rains. Maybe it doesn't even rain because there's no edi aleminah. There's nothing going up. It could be the Rashbi himself.
Would die of thirst.
So, but that way you can understand Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa. He was walking one night, and he asked Hashem to stop the rain because he didn't want to get wet.
Okay.
How can one person stop the rain? Well, it depends. Maybe all the rain is because of this one person. That's what the Gemara says. Kol ha'olam nizon bishvil Chanina b'ni. That the entire world is fed in merit of Chanina, my son. And he only needs carobs from Shabbos to Shabbos. But in any case, there's this idea that all this is tshuva. But on the other hand, we find that the cloud also symbolizes something else. The sages say, that the cloudy day is as difficult as a day of din, as if a person has a court date on that date, and it's din, and he has judgment. Because there's also an image of the cloud being a symbol of a person's iniquities, of his transgressions, and especially
because it blocks out the sun.
Okay, exactly, because it blocks out the sun. מחיתי כאבשך וכענן חטאותיך והענן הוא מסך מבדיל, כמו שכתוב, עוונותיכם מבדילים. So the cloud is likened to sins. And the cloud is something that separates a person from Hashem's light, from the light. And it separates between a person and God. But we learned all that because we said that obviously that's what the whole world is for. The whole world is for bringing us to a state in which we do feel separate. We shouldn't sin, but we should feel separate. It also causes sin, so that's already clouds. So really, just as we have two types of darkness, we said there's darkness that's something in and of itself, and there's darkness that's a lack of light. So the same way here with the cloud. There's two types of cloud. Ha'echad, when it comes to darkness, ha'echad hu choshech gashmi, is physical darkness. There's a physical type of darkness. It's a special type of something. ויש בחינת ענן גבוה, דהיינו גילוי אור אלוקי גבוה, שאינו יכול להשיגה כמו שהוא. And there's also a higher type of darkness, which here he's comparing to a different type of cloud. And the different type of cloud is the cloud that is used to symbolize something high. What do we mean? That there's some kind of levush, there's some kind of enclothement for Hashem's light, for the spiritual, so that the person can grasp it, can understand it. That's what it means when it says that when Rivka came into Sarah's tent after she had passed away, the cloud came back. There was a anan kashur al oel.
She became Sarah.
Anan kashur al oel. What does it mean that anan kashur al oel? That there's a cloud tied to that there was always a feeling that there was a godliness in this tent. Doesn't mean that there was actually a cloud that followed her. There was no physical cloud there.
Well, it was a cloud at the time of
it's a symbol. I don't know.
When the Jews
I don't know.
crossed through the desert, there was a cloud that protected them from the sun.
I don't know if a regular person could see it with his eyesight. There was an atmosphere like that. Well, there was something that you could see. What?
It's also an inner tzniut, the woman is hidden. The women are not supposed to be seen. Women are supposed to be.
You're mixing that up with children.
No. She's into hidden.
Kol kvuda bat melech pnima. Okay.
So the cloud keeps her, hidden away from generalizing.
Kol kvuda bat melech pnima literally means that the gifts that a woman has, kvuda, is like the possessions.
Yeah.
That a woman shouldn't flaunt her possessions. That's literally what it means.
I've never heard that expression.
Kvuda means like luggage.
No, makes sense.
It's possessions. Yeah. So, in any case, the fact is, every person has to be tzniistic with Hashem. Vatzna lechet im Elokecha. Should walk modestly with Hashem. Is men and women. But there are different ways of doing this. But again, the point is that I don't know if this was a cloud that people could physically see. There was something there. There's no question. When you came close to this encampment, you felt that there was something holy about it. You felt that there was Hashem's light was in this place. You saw a revelation of Hashem in the way that people talked, in the way that they treated one another. You can see that. You can, like Avram says, "V'araguni, rak ki en yirat Elokim b'makom hazeh." They will kill me because there's no fear of God in this place. I told you once that Rav Ginsburg explains that today, Yiras Shamayim, to have fear of heaven today, means sensitivity. That's what it really means today. Because nobody knows what fear of heaven really is. But you can feel that the person is sensitive to other people. And if he has sensitivity to other people, he won't abuse his status. He won't. You need Yiras Shamayim, for instance, like in the medical field. The doctor has to have a lot of Yiras Shamayim. And the Yiras Shamayim is really to have sensitivity to people. Because you can't measure it any other way. How do I know what's in your heart? But it comes out as sensitivity. And that's the expression of it. So in the same way here, there's a cloud that was following them everywhere. And this is called a high cloud. So it's not a cloud physically. It's saying that there's a way that Hashem is enclothing himself in the world. Gilui or Eloki gavoa sheno yachol lasiga. Kmo shu. You couldn't grasp this light without some kind of garment, without some kind of enclosement. So the first comes, the one that's really darkness, physical darkness, not just lack of light. That comes ba'arishon ba'al anan. No, so there's a mistake here somewhere. He was talking about the second type. בא על ידי הענן, כמו שכתוב במשה ויבוא משה בתוך הענן, ולא יכול משה לבוא, כי שכן עליו הענן. והענן הוא מלבוש לאור השם שיוכל על ידו להיות בא למטה. So it means to say like this, that the first type, the real physical darkness, which is Hashem as he can't be grasped, comes through the lower type of cloud. And the lower type of cloud is already something that can allow it to be grasped. So even in clouds, there's two types. There's the type that's really dark, and that doesn't allow Hashem to be grasped at all. It separates you completely from Hashem. It can't be grasped. There could be the reason is very simply, he says here, because of Averos, because you have sins. And because of that, Hashem is physically dark. You can't grasp it. But there's another type of cloud, and that is already an intermediary. And that's what we talked about, that the Keshet, the rainbow, was created on Friday evening between Friday and Shabbos, because it's an intermediary between the two. So this second type of cloud, that's what it says, that Moshe ba be'avanan, that Moshe entered into the cloud. What do we mean he entered into the cloud? It wasn't necessarily a physical cloud. There could be that there was. Could be that there was a manifestation of a physical cloud. But the point was that Moshe Rabbeinu entered the state in which he was able to hear what Hashem was saying. That it could be, that it came enclosed. So the physical darkness is like a type of very deep thoughts that simply have no parable. You have no way of explaining them to somebody else. That's what it means that it's physically dark. But it can also be that it's because of sins, that you mamish can't. It's like when people say, my thinking is cloudy. I can't break through to see the I don't have clarity. In the person's psyche, so we also, in our psyche, we have this type of cloud. And the physical cloud, what is this? When does it become a physical cloud, like physical darkness, like a state of actually separating us from Hashem? ועל ידי שמשים דעתו וליבו רק בעניינים דתענוגי העולם, ג' תאוות גשמיות, יותר ואיסור חס וחלילה. על ידי זה נעשה מגושם מאוד, עד שלא יוכל להאיר בו אור אלוקי. So that's why we call it Geshem. Okay, there's a Geshem that is so thick, you're so physical, you're so corporeal. Okay. You're so engrossed in the world that you have no ability to understand anything spiritual. And no amount of even parables will help you. So he says that's when a person is, again, when we say sins, it's very interesting. It's true that all the sins are bad. But the real problem with the sin is not the act itself, at least as far as revealing Hashem.
Between you and Hashem.
Okay. It's the fact that you're engrossed in something else. Okay. It's the fact that your mind is encaptured within this silly reality, and you become so thick of thinking that you can only think of physical things and physical pleasures, and so it becomes impossible for most people are like that. They can't understand the value of the joy that comes from understanding something. And it's very interesting that somebody once came to the Tzanzer, and he said, so it's not exactly shaykh, for another time. It's related to something else. Okay. And how do we say it in Hebrew? That the person becomes very rainy. You would say rainy. Megusham is like he became rainy. Okay, he becomes totally insensitive. He doesn't feel anything. The more you advance, maybe I will say the Tzanzer thing. Somebody came to the Tzanzer and he said, you Orthodox have it backwards. You don't get it. The more a person is spiritual, the more he should be able to not be sensitive to things. For instance, he gave him what was he talking about? He said, if there's a woman who doesn't dress modestly, I have no problem with it, he says. The fact that you have problems with women is because you're too sensitive to it. Meaning you're not really spiritually advanced. If you were really spiritually advanced, you wouldn't see it at all. It wouldn't bother you. So So he said to him, look, there's people in Africa who still walk without shoes. Their feet are not sensitive to rocks and to uneven ground or whatever. They don't feel it. He said, the more you advance, the more sensitive you become. That's why we wear shoes. Because civilization doesn't mean becoming desensitized. That's what you really are. He's trying to explain to him. You're desensitized. The fact that you don't see it, or you say that you don't see it, I don't believe that you don't see it. You just ignore it. You're desensitized. For you, this is all the pornography in the world has made you desensitized to what you're seeing. It doesn't mean anything to you anymore. That's like a person walking on gravel without, or on open earth without shoes. But the more you advance in civilization, the more sensitive you become. Okay?
The chief rabbi of England, before Johnny Sachs was called, Lord Jacobonovich. Yeka, total Yeka, very nice guy, Talmud Chacham. And he had a principle, he never went to anybody's lavoya.
To anybody's?
He never went to the lavoya of any Jew who passed away, unless the Jew was mamish
Talmud Chacham.
Hamish Yid. Hamish Yid, from Unzera. So Hamlin was a multi-millionaire who lived in Melbourne, and he passed away. He was totally disconnected from Yiddishkeit. Yaakov told them to wait, he's coming for the lavoya. So he gets on a plane. In those days, you fly.
3 days.
3 days, yeah, you go.
Yeah.
So after they said to him, what's going on here? This guy had no connection with Yiddishkeit. He said, why did you come to this lavoya? After all your principles, I had to go one side of the world, the other side of the world. So he said, this guy lived in Melbourne and he was a multi-millionaire. And his whole life was just Gashmias. How much more Gashmias? How much more Gashmias? And he had a dream. He had a dream that one day he would get an invitation to become a member of the golf club. You couldn't join the golf club. You'd only be invited. And to be invited, you needed a certain number of $1 billion. And you needed to be one of the in people. So one day, the great day came, and he finally gets the letter in the post that he's been invited to become a member of the golf club. So he goes there, with the invitation, and it's like mamish, like a big day, you don't say
like
daven.
becoming being knighted.
Right. So he gets this. So the secretary says to him, he says, you're very lucky that we invited you to become a member of the golf club. So he says, why am I more lucky than anybody else? He says, because we have a rule, we don't have any Jews in our golf club. We don't have any Jews in our golf club, and you're the first Jew who's ever been invited. So he said to him, so if there's no Jews allowed in your golf club, I don't want to be a member. And he gave them the invitation back. And Yaakobovich said that was Mesiras Nefesh of the highest order, because he'd forgotten really that he was Jewish. He was living in a world of Gashmis. And then suddenly it was, are you with us or you're not with us? You are Jewish, you're not Jewish. This was a question from Hashem. If you're Jewish, then tell them to go to hell. Which is what he did, right? So it's exactly here where it becomes so covered in this Gashmis that you can't see anything.
You can't see anything. So he, for a moment, had a peek at the rainbow.
Right.
That was a moment of tshuva. So normally, when a person is so covered with his gashmius, with his corporal reality, with his interest only in physical things, and he has nothing spiritual in his life, he becomes so thick, like a thick cloud, that so the divine light can't shine on it. It can't penetrate his thick skull. And he can't even do tshuva. And that's why the sages call it that he comes to purify. Why do they say litahir? They should have said the person wants to do tshuva. Well, why use the mashal of litahir? Tahara is something else. It's not connected to tshuva. They use it because the clean sky is called tahara. Cleanliness. That's why sometimes they translate impurity as uncleanliness. But it is, that's what it means. Abali taher means that he wants to, we actually learned this, that's abal letaher. that he really comes to. We started learning this on Sukkos before you couldn't come. So we started learning letaher is really to cleanse his animal soul. But in any case, letaher means that the sky suddenly, the clouds
becomes clear.
it clears the sky. There's a phrase in the Zohar called tahiru ilah, which means the cleanly sky, the cleansed sky. מסייעים לו, כי מחמת שנתגשם מאוד בתאוות קשה לו להגיע למעלת התשובה. ולכן צריך מסיוע מלמעלה שיהיו לו כוח על התשובה, שיהיה לו כוח על התשובה. And therefore he needs help from above to clean, to part the clouds. And it's an image. You see the clouds parting, and suddenly the light coming down. But if it's just clouds parting and the light coming down, so we see that every day maybe. Not every day, but we see that a lot. The chiddush is that there's a rainbow. Why does the rainbow come? Because the clouds are now filled with water. So there's two things happening here. On the one hand, the light is now coming down. So the light is coming from above to below. But the rain, the water that collected in the cloud came from below. We said that that's I forgot the word, not condensation, yeah, of the evaporated water. And the water came from below. It rose up. So there's a connection here between the work of the man from below to above. That's the tshuva that he did. And Hashem helping him from above and parting the clouds and making the clouds not as thick as they were. That's what real tshuva is about. That there's a connection between the man, the feminine waters, my work coming up, and Hashem's parting of the clouds coming down. That's called the mad, the masculine waters. Maim tchurin and maim nukvin. Man and mad. ולכן צריך סיוע מלמעלה, עד שהארץ, וזהו עניין דור המבול, and that's what happened in the generation of the flood, שנתגשמו מאוד הם והעולם, עד שהארץ נשחטה. They were so thick and coarse, there was so much sinning there was so much interest just in the physical world, until the land itself was already destroyed. And that's what it means that in those 20 generations, or the 10 generations until the flood, and still a little bit afterwards, the clouds were so thick. That's what it means to say. It doesn't mean to say
they hid godliness.
They couldn't see godliness. There was no.
They couldn't see it, or they hid it.
They couldn't. Their actions hid godliness. It didn't allow. We also said in the beginning that there's also another thing here. It's not just that they didn't do tshuva. There was no tshuva in the world, or there wasn't really an understanding of tshuva. So sometimes when we ask about Noach, why didn't Noach make everybody do tshuva? The simple answer is because nobody knew how to really do it.
It hadn't been invented yet.
It had been invented, but nobody had really used it. Meaning, it existed in the world. We know that Cain did a little bit of tshuva, and he got half off his sentence. But it was not common knowledge. I mean, Cain didn't teach people. That's the difference between Cain and, let's say, David. Also, both from the red side, from the side of Din. But Cain, instead of accepting the fact, it's almost like this. Why did Hashem not accept, is a question that goes around. Why did Hashem not accept Cain's sacrifice? If Cain didn't know, he didn't know that it wasn't the right thing to do. So why didn't you accept it? It's okay, because it's all a question of how you accept the result. If you take the result as a slap in your face, then you're right. What did I do? Why do I deserve this? Okay. If you accept the result as something else, that this is an opportunity, what is this an opportunity for? Hashem tells him. People miss this. People miss this. Hashem never spoke to Abel. He never once said a word to him. Not a single word. Such a big tzaddik, he never said a single word to him. Not a single word. He accepts the sacrifice. He doesn't. By the way, how did they know that they accepted the sacrifice? Whether they, all kinds of answers, but it had something to do with how the sacrifice worked. Did the smoke go up or did it fall down? Was there fire that came down from the heavens, or did he just? But he never said a word to him. Look how much dialogue he has with Cain. And the first time is not even a rebuke. It's just a
wake up call.
Not just wake up. It's a message for a mission in life. He gives him a mission. Abel doesn't know what his mission is. He has no clue. He's walking in darkness in the end. He's a good guy. He's probably not going to do anything wrong. But Hashem doesn't speak to him. And Cain is like, Hashem speaks to Cain more than he speaks to, almost more than he speaks to Adam. If you count the words, you'll see he spoke more to Cain in the end. That's also because Cain also did something afterwards. But even just the first time is many, many words. And what do they all say? You have a mission in life to teach people about tshuva. To teach them that there's a Yetzer, and the Yetzer causes you not to see Hashem, not to see the godliness, not to see the divine, not to see what's beyond. And I also am giving you a strength, which eventually we will call Torah. Okay? But I'm giving you a power to overcome this coarseness in yourself.
Very nice.
And he gives him a mission, and he doesn't do it. Why? Because he feels only, what's the word? Slighted. Okay. I don't say jilted, but that's for a woman. But for a man, it's like he feels slighted. He feels something's wrong.
His ego was
because how can it be that my sacrifice was not received? It wasn't received. What do you want? You didn't do it right. What's the big deal? I'm a good guy. No, you might not be as good as you think you are, but that's not the point. Nobody's going to come to you with any with any complaints about how you are. What they're going to come to you with complaints is, what did you do after you realized what you are? How you are. Something has to wake you up. Okay, so take it as a wake-up call. That's all it is. Nobody wants to hurt you. It's not to offend you. It's not to embarrass you. It's not any of these things. It's really to give you your mission. So that's what a very wise man once said. How do they say everything is decreed in the heavens? So how can they decree that somebody sins? They say they don't decree that ever. They don't say somebody will sin. They don't say Moshe will sin tomorrow. What do they say? Moshe is going to forge a new path in tshuva. That's how they see it. From above, it doesn't look really like a sin. It just looks as a primer for doing tshuva. And tshuva is really having a mission. He has a mission now in life. But he never did that. He never used it. He once told Adam, the Medrash says that he told Adam that he did half tshuva and that it helped. But it was too late. It says Adam, that's why Adam came back to Chava, and that's why they had Seth and so on. But really, it didn't propagate through the generations. He didn't understand this concept of tshuva because Cain didn't do his job. He really didn't do his job. So really, it wasn't Noach who was supposed to bring the world back in tshuva. It was Cain who was supposed to. And there's good reason to say that Cain lived till very close to the flood itself. Meaning that people always say, who's the longest living person in the Bible? And they say Methuselah, because he lived 969 years. Okay, it says that about him, that he lived 969 years and he passed away the week before the flood. But there's good reason to say that Cain lived for over 1,600 years. And how do I know that? Because Cain was also killed at the very end, just before the flood. He was killed by Lamech, when Lamech was blind already. So he must have been very old already. So we're talking more than 1,000 for sure, and probably very close. So he must have lived. He probably lived for 1,600 years and more. And why did Hashem keep him alive for so long? To teach people about tshuva, but he never taught them anything. It's very interesting that Naamah, Noach's wife, was the seventh generation from Cain, and he was the 10th generation from Seth. So they both came together. The tzaddik, the guy who doesn't know anything about tshuva, Ish tzaddik tamim b'dortav. He's a tzaddik. And Naamah, his wife, was probably a balas tshuva. In the family, they probably did know something about it. But also, it didn't work. So in that sense, Noach and Naamah are a little like Yitzchak and Rivka. Yitzchak is a tzaddik, and Rivka, she's a daughter of a very wicked man, and Lavan, and not Lavan, Betuel. Okay, so they didn't have strength in that generation for tshuva, so that they could see the rainbow, so that they could see Hashem's light coming down through the clouds that are not so thick. And how do they become not so thick? Because you do tshuva. And so the clouds that form are clouds that are much thinner. Mechamat godel aviyut ananim, because their clouds were very thick. Hainu ananim, hainu shengashu b'ta'avot, because they were very engrossed within their cravings. Ki yishchit kol basar dar kol haaretz, because everything had been wayward. ואחר כך, על ידי המבול שנקרא מי נוח, נייחא דרוחה, על ידי זה נתערו הארץ. But then, with the flood, the land was cleansed. הדרך שאמרו רז"ל, מטומאתה. Because there was not as much tumah, there wasn't as much coarseness. כמו שכתוב, מבול בא לטהר את הארץ. As it says, that the flood came to cleanse the earth. על דרך שאמרו רז"ל, הבא לטהר מסייעין לו. In the same way that Chazal say, that somebody who wants to do tshuva, he's helped. How's he helped? Hainu hakoach al b'chinat tshuva. The help is in the form of giving a person strength to do tshuva. ולכן אחר המבול נאמר זאת אות הברית את קשתי נתתי בענן. And that's why only after the flood could the rainbow be seen, and Hashem could say, this is my sign, this is the sign of my covenant with you. דהיינו שיהיה פועל אור השמש בעננים. And the sign of the covenant really is, what was the first covenant? The first covenant, according to this, is the covenant of tshuva. Yeah. It's very interesting, because there's a whole question there. What's the covenant, though? Everybody says the covenant is that it won't destroy the world with another flood. But really, what it means to say is that I'm giving you the power of tshuva. I'm giving all of humanity the power of tshuva. Okay? דהיינו שיהיה פועל אור השמש בעננים, so that the light of the sun, meaning the light of Havaya, meaning the light of Hashem, can be seen through the clouds, even after you sin, because you can do tshuva. שיתחזו גווני קשת בעננים, כי העננים הוקשו אחר המבול, because they became similar, they were likened after the Mabul to clouds that come as a result, we said, of water rising. That's the power of tshuva. וזהו עניין הקשת שנתחדש אחר המבול, ואחר כך כתיב, וראיתיה לזכור ברית עולם, היינו קיום נצח על ידי כוח התשובה. So it's tshuva that keeps the world going. במקום שבעלי תשובה עומדים, צדיקים גבוהים אינם יכולים לעמוד, לכן בחמת זה, I don't know what he wants here. So it's tshuva that keeps the world going, and that's what we mean when we say that in a place that Bali tshuva, that the people who do tshuva stand, even the perfect tzaddik can't. What do we mean? That here it's very clear that the perfect tzaddik was like Noach. He can't make the world stand. But the moment that there's tshuva in the world can survive even without a flood. Meaning Noach, in his perfect righteousness, couldn't fix the world. Okay, so tomorrow if you come...
No, tomorrow is Pidyon Abenta.
Oh, after Pidyon Abenta.
I know you haven't told me what time it is. Beautiful, very, very nice.